Washington surveyed the area, drew a map, and measured the distances from all the plantation houses to each of the sites proposed for the new church. He made the compelling argument that the site proposed north of Pohick Creek was more centrally located to all the plantation houses and won the debate. The vestry elected to build on this property, which now encompasses 45 acres at the corner of Old Colchester Road and Richmond Highway. At the time, few people lived close enough to the site to hear church bells, and the new Pohick Church was built without a bell tower. Many of the names of those enslaved, indentured, and free people who contributed to the construction of the new Pohick Church between 1769 and 1774 have survived in the minutes of the Truro Parish Vestry and in the estate papers of Daniel French, the general contractor who died during the construction on May 25, 1771. The vestry minutes list resolutions and accounting of those who was paid to carry out the resolutions, including some of the decisions and tasking related to the construction of the new church. George Washington, for example, was tasked with the purchase of a cushion for the pulpit, crimson velvet fabric with gold fringe for the desks and the communion table, and 2 folio prayer books covered in blue turkey leather with the parish name printed in gold. George Washington donated funding for carved ornamentation and gilding and lettering on the altarpiece and on gilding for the pulpit ornamentation. Church wardens Daniel McCarty and Thomas Coffer ran the advertisement in the Virginia and Maryland Gazettes announcing the intent to build a 3,000 square foot brick church and asking for interested persons to attend a planning meeting with their plans. Daniel French won the contract as the undertaker to build the new Pohick Church for £877, current money of Virginia, to be paid in 4 increments. Virginia currency was worth about 75% of the same denomination in English sterling. George Mason was the security, that is, the cosigner of the contract. As the location of the new church was on the property of Daniel French, he deeded a little more than 3 acres to the vestry for 1 guinea per acre. 1 guinea was worth £1 plus 1 shilling, or 21 shillings. French was also a Fairfax County justice, a judge, along with George Washington. In September 1766, both French and Washington were sworn in together as justices of Fairfax County Court. On behalf of the vestry, the conveyance documents for this land were prepared by the church wardens Daniel McCarty and Thomas Coffer. The vestry paid James Wren and William West 40 shillings each for the drawings furnished to the vestry. James Wren, who drew the plans, claimed descent from Sir Christopher Wren, the distinguished architect who designed many buildings in London. The drawings used for the new church were those used for Falls Church, but the size and many details of the new church were different. These differences were specified in the vestry minutes. As the seat of the Truro Parish Vestry, for example, the new Pohick Church needed to be larger than Falls Church. The vestry minutes specified a length of 65 feet, a width of 45.5 feet, and a wall height of 28 feet above the foundations. The vestry minutes also specified 2 doors and 1 window in the west wall instead of the 2 windows and 1 door at Falls Church. The vestry formed a building committee which included George Washington, George Mason, George William Fairfax, Daniel McCarty, and Edward Payne. Peter Wagner, Martin Cockburn, and Alexander Henderson were added later. During construction in 1772, funds were running low, and the vestry auctioned off most of the box pews east of the crossing. The prices ranged from 12 to 16 pounds. George Washington, George Mason, George William Fairfax, and others purchased the pews. Because of the will of Daniel French directed the use of the estate to complete the church in the case of his death, and because George Mason was the security of the contract, the cosigner, and was already the executor of the estate of Daniel French, he had great flexibility and authority to utilize the estate of Daniel French to purchase labor and materials and to utilize the enslaved and indentured workers owned by French to complete the new church. The inventory of the estate of Daniel French contains the names and skills of enslaved people who were owned by Daniel French, and most of whom were on the building site on that date. The estate accounting lists payments for many tasks and purchases for the construction of the new church, revealing the names of many of those contributing to the effort. George Washington, for example, was reimbursed for his purchase of 32,000 shingles for the new church. The primary carpenter was Going Lampier, a respected carpenter from Alexandria. Also, a well-known woodcarver was William Bernard Sears, who had previously been indentured to George Mason and worked on Gunston Hall under William Buckland. Most of the wood carving, gilding, and glazing was done by Sears. Other woodworkers included Zachariah Bond, enslaved joiners Jack, Peter, and Shear. William Copine, who had worked on Aquia Church, was the primary stonemason. Hanson Harrison and Francis Coffer also helped with stonework. William Copine was also made the small colonial baptismal font via a separate agreement with the vestry for £6. The vestry commissioned the altarpiece with the Apostles' Creed, Lord's Prayer, and Ten Commandments, with the lettering done by William Copine. He had previously done the lettering on Aquia Church. The primary painter and plasterer was Josias Miles. Metal work was likely done by enslaved metalsmiths George, Joe, and Tom. Because Daniel French died after most of the brickwork was completed, there were likely many brickmakers and bricklayers who were no longer working at the site at the times of the inventory and accounting of his estate. Of those workers, the names of only a few bricklayers are known: Apollos Cooper, Mr. Hall, Mr. Gilpin, and Ben Burton, who was an indentured to Daniel French and living near the site. There were at least 26 enslaved people owned by Daniel French, working and living mostly on the site, including 7 skilled workers and others of all ages. Their overseer was Thomas Triplett. The cook was Mary Wilson. The firewood cutter was enslaved man Peter. The names of many transporters, businessmen, suppliers, and merchants involved were also known. Known contribution of these are recognized on a bronze plaque in the rear of Pohick Church. There were certainly many others, enslaved, indentures, and free, whose names and contributions remain unknown. The estate accounting shows, for example, that extra labor was contracted, but the names are not listed. The new Pohick Church was completed in 1774, just 2 years before the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration was probably read for one of the first times to the surrounding community on the steps of the new Pohick Church.